Hey everyone, and welcome back to another World of Warcraft video. So, Elune is the most enigmatic figure in the Warcraft universe. Truly, she is the final great mystery of Warcraft's lore, one that I think reminds us all of the good old days of the old god speculation in vanilla and TBC. And with Blizzard's drive to turn the universe into a more grand, cosmological scale war between the fundamental forces, the question of Elune has become even more compelling. So, today we are going to have a crack at seeing where Elune fits into this massive cosmological conflict. We'll explore several theories and address the hard evidence, but for us to draw the really satisfying conclusions, we're going to hit up Tolkien. We're going to have some really cool stuff there. We're going to have to dive deep, and we're going to have to skill up at Skillshare.com, the online learning platform for creators with thousands of courses across design, videography, productivity, and much more. Skillshare Premium gives you full access to the whole service for only $10 a month, though you'll get 2 months for free with my link. Now, the course that's had the largest impact on me, that was Thomas Frank's Productivity Masterclass. It's an incredible one-stop shop, came at a real chaotic time, and it helped me out a whole bunch. Recently, though, I've been revisiting from Bean to Cup now that I've got a V60 and a new grinder. That's been quite fun. And I've also been hitting up Aaron Draplin's Illustrator courses. Yeah, I'm still a bit scared of vector work, but you know what? I'm getting there. So that's a smattering of how I use it. Of course, if you'd like to join me, you can head up the link down below. And a massive thank you to them for sponsoring the channel and supporting us for so long. With that, let's get into the video. Elune doesn't hold a singular position within Tauren society. Instead, she is part of a wider naturalistic pantheon that includes her, aka Musha, the Blue Child, the Sun, and then most importantly, the Earth Mother. Now, the Tauren story is that the Earth Mother tore her eyes out in grief, and that Elune is one of those eyes. We have then since actually seen Bane Bloodhoof confirm that the Tauren believe that Azeroth's world soul actually is the Earth Mother herself, and that actually means that there's a very strong implied connection to the Titans because of that. Now, we saw more of this in Legion with the Pillars of Creation, so the Tears of Elune, the pillar in question, does not fit into the normal Pantheon-derived naming scheme of the pillars. Now, this suggests a link between Elune and Aenar, the only Titan, of course, who doesn't have a pillar named after them, and that is something that also goes along with the Elunari connection from the Antorus raid. Past that, though, the Tears of Elune are only made available after Ysera's death, with the implication being that Elune cried that tear into existence, a moment so fraught with emotion that it brought a god to tears. There are lots of connections, there's even one or two more past that, but they don't necessarily mean that Elune is a Titan. What I would suggest is that Elune has an established relationship with the Titans. Indeed, there's actually a theory that supports both, and that theory is that Elune represents a fundamental piece of Azeroth's world soul. You see, when Y'Sharj was ripped from the planet, maybe some fundamental essence of the world soul could have escaped there, and that could be in line with the Tauren myth of the Earth Mother ripping out her own eye, and that could have taken refuge on one of the two moons of Azeroth. Now, this is supported by the early Night Elven belief that Elune actually slept within the Well of Eternity during the day, with, of course, the Well being an arcane conduit to the Azerothian world soul, and the Well being created by Aman'Thul ripping Y'Sharj out of the planet. And I've got to admit, that really does sound quite compelling and satisfying, but then we've got to remember that the Titans are more under the arcane umbrella. Now, sure, Elune does use arcane magic, but she's not limited to it. We're going to explore the implications of that shortly, but let's move on to Night Elf culture, and let's just examine their religion and what that has to say about Elune. Elune is the central figure of Night Elven religion, personifying their culture in her nocturnal nature, reverence of the moon, and connection to nature. Now, Elune has been placed within a family dynamic in their culture, as is seen in her relationship with Milorn and Cenarius. Now, having deities fill familial roles, that's fairly common to real-world religions. The question is, though, was this retroactively placed onto the divinity of Elune so the Night Elves could conceptually place themselves within the same realm as her? I think that's the real question here. As a point of interest, the Earthen actually also revere Elune, and they were surprised to hear Ysera referred to as Cenarius' mother, as they had, of course, believed it to be Elune, and it is confirmed that it is Elune. So, the question here is whether Night Elven culture was formed in such a way because of the influence that Elune had on their development as a race, or if the Night Elves have placed these fundamental aspects of their culture on top of whatever Elune actually is. Regardless, though, as a point of fact, we can say that Elune is the Night Elven deity. She has acted in this role for at least 14,000 years, and most likely for far longer indeed, as, sort of in the guise of a dark troll low, of course, before the Night Elves really took their current form. With Elune's connection to the Emerald Dream and her immense power, we could very easily position her as being an arbiter-like figure for the Emerald Dream. Blizzard are really creating a hierarchy of power within their new cosmic realms, so I do actually think we can assume that each realm will have its power structures and its main powerful characters. We've already got the Titans within Arcane, we've got Void Lords for Shadow, we've got the Arbiter within the Shadowlands, so I think it could make quite a lot of sense that Elune is just one of those figures. There is incredible evidence pointing towards Elune actually being a Light Lord, or perhaps that she exists within a cyclical system of light and void. You see, we have ample evidence to suggest that the light and void are deeply linked. That's from the clash of these forces before the ordering of the universe, all the way up to, say, the Naru falling into their dark void state. Now, the first piece of compelling evidence here comes from the Ask Creative Development second thread that Blizzard did, and this thread is explaining Velen's trip to Darnassus. Whilst there, Velen claimed that from descriptions of Elune and the way in which her power manifested, that it reminded him of the Naru. Now, obviously, him saying that, standing in the Temple of Elune, well, Tyrande asked him to stop making outlandish claims, and she was clearly rather offended at the notion. We could simply explain this as Velen having a one-dimensional view of divinity, seeing everything as being Naru, but the third Ask Creative Development Q&A clearly states Velen has been a prophet of the Naru for many thousands of years, and it's unlikely he would propose such a theory without significant evidence and consideration. Moving past this older source, there is further, more modern evidence that really does ramp up the speculation. So, over in the Legion expansion, Khadgar read a bunch of ancient cosmological tomes, and he tells us that Elune was likely the creator of the Prime Naru. Now, this is rather curious given how the Tears of Elune were able to, of course, activate the fragment of Zira that we got and then lead us to the Army of the Light. Now, before Shadowlands, I think many people didn't care about this type of speculation, but here's the deal. With Shadowlands' announcement, we know that this is more significant, even to the point where I think this will define, say, 11.0 or 12.0. So going back to the Light Lord idea, what conclusion can we draw? Well, we have confirmation of Void Lords, but little else there. Now, that said, it does make sense within the mechanics of the Warcraft universe that the Light Lords and the Void Lords are cyclical representations of the same entity. I mean, we've got Dark Naru, so it's not out of the realms of possibility, and technically speaking, the Old Gods and the Naru do fall within the same conceptual family, if this was the case, and that is further backed up by what Xal'atath actually says on the Broken Shore, where Xal'atath calls the Naru long-lost brethren. Well, if you've got Void Lords and Light Lords being a sort of a cyclical entity, actually maybe even the same entity, if you've got that going on, and then you've got, Dark Naru and Light Naru. What is the deal when the Old God forces literally are saying that they used to be tied to the Naru? That certainly is quite a major bit of information, and I think it really is going to matter given this cosmological exploration of the Warcraft lore that Blizzard is clearly going to be going for. Ultimately here, I think we do have a two sides of a coin situation, but I think Elune might actually represent the coin itself. And with that, let's take quite a few steps deeper. When we have seen the powers of Elune, it has been of such a magnitude that it really compares to nothing. Take, for example, making Ysera a constellation. If Elune was to change the position of stars such that we could see them now, she would literally have to travel back in time, many, many thousands of years, or would have had to have a lot of forethought to have actually seen Ysera's death, because, light years, how light actually works. So with this and all the other information we've had in this video, you've got to wonder, what if Elune is at the center of everything? I mean, she is, after all, referred to by Blizzard as a true deity, and that just shows a power beyond that of the Titans, and if correct, then yeah, she could be one of the most powerful forces we've reckoned with thus far. I mean, she's a power with the ability to order the cosmos and to form constellations. Indeed, her interests in mortals, they really do seem to be rather limited or just big picture to the point of being cult. I mean, take, for example, how she just sort of leaves the Night Elves to their fate at Teldrassil, yet she has intervened in little ways to help Malfurion and Tyrande it before. I think it's quite clear she's got a finger in every pie, and that she desires to maintain some form of cosmic balance. I mean, how else do you explain her involvement with, say, the Emerald Dream? Then, the Emerald Dream's influence in the Shadowlands, maybe the creation of the Prime Nara that she's connected to, her connection with the Titans as covered in the Tauren mythology, her use of the light, her darker Night Warrior persona, and then her widespread worship, both from native Azerothian races but also Titan-forged descendants. I mean, we've seen her followers be able to draw on the light, the void, arcane. I mean, take this, Elune in her Night Warrior aspect is said to have set the souls of the valorous dead as stars in the sky. So essentially, we've seen Elune express power from like 5 of the 6 fundamental forces. I would then wonder if maybe Fel and Disorder are, because they're the only ones not accounted for here, maybe if they are being set up as an opposition to the sort of totality of Elune. I mean, the WoW universe seems to be one where nothing is complete without its antithesis, so that could be the case. I mean, indeed, we don't know who the fundamental deity of Fel is. I mean, it certainly isn't Sargeras. Demons existed long before he did. He found them, so there's clearly something deeper there. Okay, with everything we've just explored in mind, it's time to now make a statement on the divinity of Elune. Now, you may wonder, how can I do that, right? When through this video, I've went through loads of different theories, and they've all got decently clear evidence in-game. We could assume that there's maybe a concerted effort to misdirect the player base, or what I think is more speculatively interesting, as a line of inquiry, that everything we've talked about here is actually true, and is not mutually exclusive. If that's the case, it would be more correct to say the divinities of Elune rather than just Elune the deity. Now, we should understand the 6 forces and the cascading realms of existences, I think, as being fundamental aspects of what Elune is. Indeed, this is getting closer to, well, 2 things. Number 1, I mean, Blizzard may have got their inspiration from the Kabbalah. I mean, they've borrowed many real-world religious systems and themes in the past, and I mean, just look at the similarity in these charts, right? Now, I mean, it's pretty darn striking. So, for a more clear fantasy example, they also could have got this from Tolkien's Eru Ilúvatar, a character who, like Elune, very rarely interferes with the affairs of mortals, but is not absent. That is something that Tolkien did actually confirm in one of his letters. Now, given how we've experienced her in Azeroth thus far, and Blizzard saying that she's a true deity kind of character, I think there's a very high chance that Elune is actually fulfilling that role. I mean, even just aesthetically, Blizzard's official Warcraft encyclopedia actually described her similarly to Eru Ilúvatar, with white hair, alabaster skin, and eyes of pure moonlight, at least, in terms of how mortals actually depict her. And I know some of this does sound like I'm saying the Blizzard are a little bit derivative, but listen, Azeroth is like not even a name they came up with. They literally have Odin spelt with a Y. I mean, Blizzard are extremely derivative in a lot of where they get their inspirations from. The whole point is that they usually combine things in an interesting manner. They take the ideas together. And I think what we're dealing with Elune here is a very clear example of them doing that. So, if what I've said today actually bears out, and Elune is the central locus to this great cosmic conflict, then I think Shadowlands is certainly going to be enlightening us to our true nature, and with this expansion, we might actually find out who or what she truly is. I mean, they have sown so many seeds. They have just thrown so many mysteries into the game, especially over the last 2 expansions with Elune, and including in the expanded media, like, Elune interfering with Saurfang, that it's just obvious there's something going on there. And when you see Blizzard do that, when you see them sow those seeds, it's so obvious that it's going to be, maybe 2-3 expansions down the line, related to something major they've got planned there. I mean, we had Steve Denuser actually bring up the cosmological chart at BlizzCon, that cosmological chart that kind of reminds you of the Kabbalah stuff. He brought that up and he basically said, yeah, we're going to be exploring this. I mean, it's basically, they need places to go for the game, but you get the point here. I think so much is pointing towards some conception of Elune that is pretty much what we've covered in this video, with her being an extremely important, extremely fundamental, I would say, Eru Ilúvatar-like character. So, there you go, that's it for this video. Let me know, what are your theories for Elune down below? I would love to hear. And yeah, with that, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.